Every single person tries to survive because they desire peace of mind. The struggle to acquire fame, power over others, and money is all towards this end. Marriage and friendship are also for this purpose. To serve others, to fight for war and peace. All of these are attempts to sustain peace of mind. The search for peace of mind is the ultimate goal of all human beings. Such are the words of the newly reborn D.I.O. after he is retrieved from the sea and is ready to enact his 100-year plan. That's right, we're entering what is the mainline Part 3 section of everything. D.I.O. is very clearly changed from how he was back in Part 1. Right from the beginning, he doesn't have a name. Alright, he doesn't have a last name at all to him. He's just D.I.O, which if anyone knows in basic JoJo facts or, Italian or Espanol, it literally just means God. He's legitimately just calling himself God now, which fits basically for what he's doing and intending to accomplish within this part of the series. He's attaining heaven. That's what his plan is, that's what he wants. Because after everything that happened in Part 1, in the 100 years he was within the ocean, within the coffin, D.I.O had to contemplate and figure out a lot about life. Specifically, why it was he was reduced to a head, and why was it that Jonathan suddenly died? Was it by simply a string of coincidences, or was it something more? And D.I.O realizing once more that he has to face the descendants of the man he respected, the only man he would ever call a friend, a brother, it makes him really try to deconstruct and understand really what it was that led to this situation here. And it's here we also have another facet. D.I.O is seen shirtless quite a bit. He's not seen wearing many clothes. He's not seen really doing anything within his mansion beyond inspecting his body and really just indulging himself within Jonathan's body. Like he feels a level of comfort like he never did before within it. Now, this is where a certain facet of D.I.O comes into. D.I.O has some very serious inferiority complex, and that's one of the major reasons as to why D.I.O's goals and ambitions will never be satisfied, because he's always going to have something else that he wants. Or he's just simply going to be too paranoid, because there's always a what if. It's his own ego and his own inferiority and his own sense of just dismay that's always going to lead to him never truly becoming something greater. Because D.I.O is always controlled by the past. There's a scene within how the world itself is actually modeled. It's modeled after basically a diver suit, essentially. And besides, of course, the holy diver references, it's obviously a reference towards the fact that D.I.O's 100 years of solitude has left him sort of uninterested and overall hateful towards the sea itself. He doesn't want to be near the sea. He instead resides within Egypt, yes, a land of constant sun, but a place without any water. He has sincere lack of confidence within himself after the battle with Jonathan, because he can't underestimate the Joestars. He knows how Jonathan, by sheer brawn, was able to outwit him, and that he can't risk something like that. He's not terrified of them necessarily, he just doesn't want to underestimate them and potentially risk having everything he built reduced to nothing. And of course, this leads to, as well as the fact of an interesting thing with D.I.O and Jonathan's body. He inspects it a lot, he admires it because it's something he adores. It's a common trait within serial killers that they want to adapt and become things they admire, or at least become connected to it and control it in their own way. And of course, you see this a lot really with sort of an Ed Gein kind of focus here. D.I.O's interest in chimeras and manipulating things and controlling people and dominating them. He wants to have that sense of power, to be a god. And of course, with the heaven plan, it just reinforces it. D.I.O wants peace of mind, and he wants to be above everything, so he doesn't feel that sense of paranoia, that terror, that sense of dread every second of his life. Because he doesn't want to feel inferior again, because he's tired of feeling scared like that. And the whole point of D.I.O's ambition, and the whole reason why his connection with Pucci is so much more intimate compared to what we potentially would have had with, say, Vanilla Ice or any of the other women he slept with, it's a case that Pucci is willing to disagree and actually have a connection with D.I.O. D.I.O, he's able to willfully have contention, to have some difference of points, to have some conflict within their discussions, and have interesting ideas regarding ethics, philosophy, world history, and how the course of the world functions, regarding Pucci's sworn belief regarding religion, as well as D.I.O's almost sort of god complex and how he views himself. They're friends because of their differences, and D.I.O respects and admires him for that. It's a sense of connection, of intimacy that just he never really had, except with Jonathan. And he can never form that because, well, Jonathan's gone. Pucci is the only thing he has to a true friend. He can feel safe, he can feel vulnerable, he can feel comfort within Pucci, and he can attain that peace of mind with his one true friend. And once he ascends to heaven, that's it, he'll be the top. We see, of course, within Eyes of Heaven that this isn't enough. D.I.O is just, he's his own worst enemy. D.I.O wouldn't have this conflict if he wasn't so unable to understand that him in trying to conquer and control reality, in trying to attain this peace of mind, he's inherently creating conflict for himself. D.I.O's ego and his inability to just accept things as they are sometimes is why the flow of reality, the flow of gravity, the mechanisms of existence renders him absolutely broken. Unlike his son, who was able to completely break free of the chains of fate and able to become his own independent person, no longer a sleeping slave, a person who shined awe and inspiration while still being cruel and very brutal regarding those he despised in regards to his ambitions. Giorno and D.I.O do have that in common, but Giorno doesn't get rid of his goals. He doesn't compromise his morals. D.I.O possesses none. He possesses no qualms in using people and abusing them. That's the type of person he is. And this is why ultimately he fails and he dies, because he just can't help himself. He is his own worst enemy because he views himself as a victim, as he views himself as someone who just can't get better, who has to get better. Because if he doesn't control everything, then he has no sense of purpose or sense of worth to himself. That's the tragedy of D.I.O. He's such a unfortunate victim of not only circumstances but of himself. He was born evil, by Speedwagon's own words. It's a case of both nature and nurture leading to a monster being formed who would control and change the very concept of reality itself. And of course, by what the world itself represents, it not only represents a complete dominion over everything and also his own trauma from being lost in the sea for 100 years, but also represents the fact that D.I.O is always momentary. His evolution, while grandiose, is never going to lead him to being a better person. It's just going to lead him down a road of always failing. The Joestars walk the path of justice and have fate and destiny itself on their side, and it's why they're able to beat D.I.O. D.I.O in his absolute pursuit of always wanting to be the epicenter of everything is why he cannot become anything true. He never grows, he never truly evolves, and he dies for it. It's not the case that necessarily because D.I.O wasn't conforming to societal measures that he was to fail. That's what part 7 itself is showing. You can't be a conformist and absolutely have your morals and your ambitions be successful. That's what the true man of the world is about. And while certainly it is the case that, well, of course, with D.I.O, that he ultimately was a selfish person, it's shown in part 7 that the reason D.I.O fails in the end is because, again, he's ultimately compromising his own ambition to conform, manipulate, and control people. And in his pursuit of sacrificing people for his own ambitions and conforming to his own measures and the societal qualms of a more ethically gray world, that D.I.O dies. He's ultimately a victim of the world. He's not truly someone who's operating his own ethics. He's controlled and haunted by his past, just as his previous universe version was. D.I.O, in a cosmic and spiritual level, is always going to be a victim of himself, his greed, and his ambition, and his toyfulness. He's a child in true forms of every way, with a childish view of how the world should be and how should it work. That everything belongs to him and should always belong to him. That only the people he likes and he respects and admires, and the only people worth living and keeping alive, are those that are useful to him. He's a child who was broken, beaten, and battered, and a potentially born natural sociopath and narcissist. D.I.O is tragic because he's not only just a victim of who he is, He's a victim of the world, and he's a conformist. He's a sleeping slave of fate in every single way. And it's why his son surpassed him. It's why the Joestar surpassed and lived on, and his legacy is nothing anymore. And that's why D.I.O is honestly one of the best characters Araki ever wrote in just fiction, period. The man always has so many chances to get better and actually meaningfully evolve, but of course, he just can't help himself.